Welcome to another episode of the Exponential Europe podcast. We are a community with a cause. We want to see reproduction and multiplication become the norm of the church in Europe in their behavior and in their language. And this podcast serves to both inform you about multiplication, about some of those practices and principles, but more really, this is me on a journey through Europe and beyond, meeting some of the people of this community to give you the story behind the faces. And this is a very exciting conversation because you get to listen to me as I am actively this is live as I'm getting to know my new friend and brother Evghenii, who I don't know much about. So you're just going to experience this live with me. So Evghenii, thanks for joining us and being part of this. What are like the most important facts that we need to know about you?
Well, first of all, thank you for the conversation. And
well, you don't know it's going to be good yet. Don't keep it going.
Yeah, well, it's the opportunity is always good. And when we talk about multiplication, that's when we talk about these things that makes us joyful and passionate. It's always good to talk about.
Perfect.
Now, whether it's going to be a good conversation or an exciting conversation,
we'll see.
Yeah. So, I'm the product of American missionary work. I came to know the Lord about 30 years ago, and I used to speak English.
When you were a baby?
No, yeah, right. I wish. At the age of 15, I came to church to beat up a guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the American missionaries came to plant a church. They were.
So where are we geographically?
This is Moldova. This is the brand new country that was born out of the fall of the USSR. We're stuck between Ukraine and Romania because most people think of Moldova. Sounds like Star Trek. Moldovans are attacking. It's like, yeah, we're aliens, but we're not that alien.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, I came to church as a thug, and the guy.
So really a thug?
I literally came to beat up a guy. I was asked to take care of a guy at a church who was bothering the pastor's family. My buddy, who was not a believer, wanted to date the pastor's daughter.
Here we go.
The pastor
It's always a love story.
Yeah.
There's always a love story.
Well, it was more of a girl story, yeah. It's like, I don't know if it was that much love. It was more of a teenage infatuation. But so I came to church to beat up a guy, to look at Americans. I've never seen Americans in my life. And I was going to get a date with a second pastor's daughter.
So how do you, you're 15 years old. How do you prepare for this?
Well, I mean, I showed up with about 15 of my other buddies.
So you didn't come alone?
Well, my story is that I'm Jewish ethnically, and so got beaten up in school for being Jewish a lot. I actually say this was the time when I was still building my testimony. So I'm still excused, before I came to know Jesus.
So same with him, yeah. So you're in school, you were beat up a lot, and that got you.
So I started to fight. I started to beat people up who thought that me being Jewish was bad. So that kind of, at the fall of the USSR, with my family on one side being very well-to-do, my grandfather was a communist, a prominent member of Communist Party, and then as the USSR fell apart, we lost everything, obviously. Wow. And so I found myself kind of on the streets, making my own way. My family didn't care enough about how I did in school or how things were, so I decided to make my own path. My whole desire was to kill the bullies that made my life miserable in school. That's how I ended up in the downtown gang. And my desire was that I take somebody to take care of my problem. So when a buddy at a bar asked me if I would do him a favor, I was thinking in the back of my mind, he's going to owe me. He owes you, that's why I showed up at the church. There was about 25 of us and probably good group of about 20 believers in a front row of a music school.
There were more of you than there was.
There was probably more of us, but we were nice. I mean, I came to beat up. Like there was a drunkard. This guy came, bothered the pastor's family, used profanity, and I came to help my buddy so that the pastor would feel okay letting his daughters go out with somebody. My buddy would do the beating himself. But then he would also look like a thug to the pastor. So, I mean, that's the long story is that I come to church, the guy's not there.
Yeah, the guy's not there.
I come to church, I gave my word, right? So I come to church on a Friday night, he's not there. I'm on a Sunday morning, he's not there. Then I'm on a Sunday night service, he's not there. I'm going.
So wait.
9 services in a row.
Wait, they have a service every night.
Well, yeah, they were doing Friday night, Sunday morning, and Sunday night. Like they were doing a Bible study, a Sunday morning service, and a Sunday night prayer meeting or something like that. So I had to show up every single time the church doors were open.
How did you know when these things were happening?
Well, the buddy of mine sort of met him a couple months prior, and he knew this whole thing about the church. I mean, it was a religious thing, but I was an atheist as a kid.
Right.
Like I was scared by the Russian military soldier into atheism because Christians are going to eat you and they're going to kill you. And then my dad, so that's about age of 10. At the age of 12, I started to go to synagogue. So my dad take me to this, it's a social event, but it's on a high feast. So all my Bible stories started to come like on the celebration of Purim. And then my mom decided that I was too sickly of a kid. So she took me to Eastern Orthodox Church and baptized me into the Eastern Orthodoxy. So, and that's all before the fall of the USSR. That's like before 1980.
Why did she do that? What did she was she hoped that somehow would...
So Eastern Orthodoxy is it's a very highly superstitious way of belief. And so instead of either taking you to a fortune teller or some kind of a magician type of a hypnotist, she decided Eastern Orthodoxy is the solution. And she was, I guess, to a degree, Eastern Orthodox. And so I was kind of messed up, with all the different...
Oh, wow, that is confusing.
Yes.
And so you come Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
For 9 services, I'm hearing the gospel.
So this is your 20 friends or whatever are with you the whole time?
The first time I came, it was 20 of us. Then the next couple times, it was less of us. And by the end of it, it was just like, with all the reality, there was like only 4 of us left.
Wow.
And when I came to know the Lord, because I came up with I came up to the pastor to challenge him on a question, like, and it's something stupid. It's like when, Jesus says in Gospel of Luke, if somebody's trying to take away a coat, you have to give him your shirt. And that's what literally happened on the streets of Chisinau, is when the thugs would stop people on the street and you beat them up and you take people's clothes away.
Right.
And I mean, we've had people just walk away, if they had pants to walk away. And because clothes was scarce. I mean, it was the fall of the USSR. And I mean, if you had anything nice. And in my mind, you beat them up back. Then you make them pay you again if they try to take away from you. So I came up to the pastor, asked him this stupid question, and he says, well, let me answer your question. He goes, in the beginning, God created Adam and Eve. He takes me to this whole story of redemption, never answers my question. But I kind of knew that I didn't really have the question. I just needed to know, how do I get what they have? Because I was loved by the church into the kingdom of God. I mean, these Christians, they were not concerned I was a thug. They were not scared to talk to me. Some of them even remembered my name. They asked me how I did in school, like next time they saw me. And I was just about to graduate high school. Of course, I was an F student.
Did they know why you were there? Were you like clear about it?
I think they kind of knew we were not good. After a while, we kind of knew that some of them told the pastor, these are bad guys from the bad neighborhood. And we were from bad guys from the bad neighborhood. But not in my mind. I mean, in my mind, it was just my life. I mean, this is what they call 90s in former Soviet Union. You just make life. But if I was not saved, I'd probably be either in prison or dead, and many of us are. But 4 of us actually came to know the Lord that Sunday.
So together you came to know
the guy who invited me. He talked to the pastor. I didn't know that, but he came and had that conversation with the pastor. And then 2 other of my buddies, we came up with this question, and the pastor said, would you want to come to know the Lord? And we're kind of looking at each other. And I'm like, I want to. Now, I would say I became a Christian before I became a follower of Jesus, because I probably took another couple months to sort of understand.
Right. It was the first step.
It was my first step.
Of many other steps.
I do believe it was a step of faith, but I guess I would say a decision to accept the gift of grace was right before my baptism service, when I had heard the gospel again. And it made sense enough to where I prayed. Minutes later, there was like 30 plus of us getting into the swimming pool. There was like 3-4 people baptizing, because the pastor was like, I got like 30 plus people to baptize. I need some help. So there were some Campus Crusades guys who came to help do the ministry. And I just remember that day, there was I lost all the desire for hatred, for killing anybody. I cared about spending time with God, spending time with Christians. I couldn't wait till the next church service would happen. And I can tell you that my life literally started changing with like hours, if not minutes. I mean, I just know that was a very, very strong turning point from that on.
And how did people around you react seeing that change?
Now, my dad, he actually was pretty happy. No, he's Jewish. Now, granted that eventually he when he realized I was really serious, he eventually stepped away from me and he didn't talk to me for 9 years. But at that first year when I came to know the Lord, he just saw some change in me. And he was happy because I started to study. I went to a Bible school. Now, not a part of the story is that it was the only school that was willing to take me, because I'm not stupid. I mean, I wasn't dumb. I just never studied. I mean, it was just not a priority. But my mom, she thought it was okay. My friends, I had some kind of pushback. But when we were sitting the next time around and we passed the bottle of vodka in a circle and everybody sips out of the bottle and it's sort of a sign of acceptance, I got passed. It's like, oh, Eugene is a Christian now, Evgeny is a Christian. And then they passed me and I was like, you know what? I don't care about you now. I use a little bit of profanity, but I walked away, and it was not hard to walk away for whatever reason, because not easy sometimes to leave that gang culture. But I walked away and never looked back, and that was probably the best thing that happened.
So 15, and then what happens after that?
I graduate high school. I turned 16. Nobody wants me. I waited till like the first week of October when, like, my grandfather could have gotten me into any university. He could have gotten me into any
Just
trade
by his
school.
name, or
But he was a very influential person. He was like the former. I actually still get recognized by his last name. Where people would remember him he was a prominent actor. He played Vladimir Lenin in theaters. So that last name used to open the doors.
Whoa. He was an actor.
He was an actor, yes, and he was
but he's also
dean of the university eventually.
Oh wow, he did. Wow, this guy's multi-trade.
I still actually have a postcard with his when he was very, fairly young in 1960s.
Wow.
They were like he was like my wife's. I think my wife's grandmother, as far as I know, was in love with him when she was young and he was young. Now he never knew her, and she just had the postcard.
Hilarious.
But yeah, it's a funny story. But my life started to drastically change. That Bible school, they needed students. I guess they were just starting, and I needed some education, and they teach you Bible from scratch. So that's why I learned that.
And this was all in Moldova?
It was all in Moldova, and within a year, the pastor of the church, the American missionary, he started a seminary. So once I went through this 1-year certificate, like a gap year, I realized I'm called to preach. This is really what I want to do with my life.
How did you finance all this? Did you live? You living at home?
So for a year, I lived with my mom. My father paid for my books.
Wow.
Now he didn't live with us. He has a different family, but he kind of saw that I started doing something with my life.
So he wanted to support that.
Yeah, my grandmother, she had a little kiosk where she actually sold like bubble gum and used books, and I helped her carry those. In the morning to go help her set up. In the evening, I would pick up her suitcases and carry it back to the house. And it took me about a year to get into that. I went to so for about 2 years more, I went just like that to Moldova Bible Seminary. So I was one of the first 20 students to enroll. I was the third to graduate 4 years later with a Bachelor of Arts in Theology.
Wow.
By that time, I already was the associate pastor of the church. I learned to speak English pretty quick.
How did you learn your English?
So I spoke English with a very heavy Russian accent.
There
I did not,
you go.
but I do have a musical ear, and I literally got involved in the church. Like every single time there was some kind of a ministry opportunity, I did it. And so
But why did you learn English? Because everything. Why did you need that?
All right. So first of all, like growing up as a Jewish kid, you don't have identity with Soviet people. Like you don't feel one, right? Just watch Schindler's List. Like in the very end, there's this really good scene where the Allied soldier rides into the factory, and one of the Jewish men comes up, and the soldier says, "You're free. You can go now." And the Jewish man says, "Well, where do we go now?" And the answer is very profound, at least to me. Says, "Well, I don't know, but don't go east. They don't like you there." And so we obviously, in Soviet Union, I'd never felt one with Soviets. Then Moldova became an independent country, and the very strong Romanian nationalism came to scene. And so I remember a girl I used to play with in a yard called me, "You're Russian pig." And I was so offended at being called Russian because I knew I was Jewish.
The pig was not the problem.
It was not. Yeah, it wasn't the problem.
The pig's not kosher,
But I just never really felt one. And then American Christians came in with a very strong Christian identity. And then, of course, they came with a very strong American identity where, students celebrated 4th of July. They were proud of their flag. And it was something,
to hold on to.
To hold on to want to desire.
Right.
And so I actually remember praying this prayer, "Lord, if you let me speak English like Americans do, I will use it for your glory." Now, it's one of those stupid prayers of the stupid kid. And I could not for years. But it was 1997. When so I would date every girl who had an American passport.
That's how you do it.
I tried, yes. Well, it was my only ticket to America. I mean, this is the country where the walls are closed. To get anywhere, you have to have a visa. So we felt like we were in a small prison. The country is small. And so in my mind, my future is outside of Moldova. But meanwhile, my wife, to be a girl who liked me, she literally, she prayed me in. And so one day I realized that I'm asking the Lord for a good wife, And he tells me for the last few months, there she is. And so she's the only girl I don't have to impress. I don't have to act stupid around like we boys usually do.
Right.
And so I realized that she's God's answer. But that was my decision to give up on the dream to like get married and move to America. And believe it or not, within a month, I started hearing comments from Americans. You sound like an American, like all the visiting professors or whatever.
Wow.
And so I would say I speak in the gift of tongues. Sometimes, there's different theological perspectives. I don't speak English. I speak American culture. I speak... And it's a little bit of a difference if I spoke English with a very, very, very heavy Russian accent where people could not understand what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Or if I started to...
The fundraising voice.
Yes. But for the relationship building, and that's part of my ministry, I am in ministry development. I'm a networker, and it allows me to use this gift to promote the church in Moldova, to promote the Christian education multiplication with so much more ease.
That's cool. What an incredible story. So you met your wife in Moldova.
Yeah, we met at the church.
What was she doing there?
She came to know the Lord. Somebody invited her to visit. She was for temporarily going to another Baptist church, but she wasn't really like committed to following the Lord. It's like one of those first steps. And when she came to church, she saw this guy on a stage. I was already part of the worship team, and she was like, I like that guy.
Wow.
And because of a couple of her friends, and our church was the dynamic church in the city, and
was she from like...
She is a Moldovan, yes.
So she was from that city? Was that her? Yeah.
So we live in the capital, so yeah.
And so what happened? Do you study theology? Did you stay in that church?
So
did you move somewhere else?
Did
you ever live in the U.S.?
I never lived in America. It was a desire, but once, I eventually got married in 2001. I was the associate pastor of the church. In 2002, the American missionary went back to U.S., and I stayed as an interim. And eventually, I became the teaching pastor of the church in 2004 and the president of the seminary. So I was the third person to graduate from that school. And to this day, we kind of moved to the co-pastorate. I have a co-pastor, so I am the teaching pastor. I'm a terrible shepherd. So, if you want a counseling session with me, I'll give you one. If you need ongoing counseling, I have a very strong, co-pastor who does very good teaching. Good teaching, and I'm a preacher. So I proclaim, I see the forest and I rally the troops. He sees the trees and he does the good teaching. And so for about 10 years, I didn't get any formal education. I eventually went and got my MA in 2014. I got my MDiv in 2023. It took me just a few years, and I'm currently in the second year of my PhD studies.
Wow, that's incredible. And where are you doing that?
I am going through Liberty University, has applied apologetics, and that was the long interest of mine. And so I'm trying to combine my theological and apologetics
And
interest.
You stayed with the same church?
And I'm the teaching pastor of that very church where I came to take care of a guy.
That's cool. That's cool. How have you seen the context change in these last 30 years?
So I would say one of the biggest revelations for me was reading a book by Richard Rembrandt, a Romanian pastor who is the founder of the Voice of the Martyrs. He has a book called Jesus on the Jewish Street. In that book, he describes his ministry before he got arrested, before he was taken into...
His books are not an easy read, man.
They are not, but they're a very, very strong read. But now, in one of them, he describes how his ministry took him from Bucharest to Chisinau to Chernovtsi, Chisinau is the capital of Moldova. Yeah. And he was a witness to where the Baptists would have fist fights and almost knife fights with the Jewish Messianic believers. So the Messianic Jewish movement started in Chisinau, Moldova with Joseph Rabinovich at the end of the 19th century.
I did not know that.
And when I read that, the scope of Moldovan Christianity until, and if I'm not going to be, I'll probably tell you till 2020, for the first 20 years of the independent Christianity, everybody was for himself. The Baptists don't work with anybody. The Pentecostals don't work with anybody. The independent churches are not necessarily respected very much. The charismatics, the full gospel churches, they're kind of on their own. We always found ourselves kind of in the middle because the Baptists consider us charismatics because we are free in expression and worship. The charismatics consider us Baptists because we are not full gospel in their sense of the word. Our churches. Yeah. And
where within that, where the Messianic Jews would they would just go to whatever church they came in faith with?
And there's a Messianic congregation.
Oh, okay.
And there were 2 or 3 over the years. One of them was Baptist. One of them was very strong, closely to the Jewishness.
Interesting.
And so the Baptist one sort of dwindled into the Baptist movement.
Right.
The one that was very Jewish dropped the Messianic. And then there's one that is a very strong one that is part of the full gospel movements. We have a very strong relationship. In fact, they are interested in multiplication. We're working with them through Exponential right now. And we just started doing several trainings with several of them. And there's a very strong Messianic congregation. But the Messianic movement exploded across the world. And it's not, so many Jews left that part of the world. So many Jews left Moldova. Like, a lot of my friends are gone, and all of the friends of our family were gone, but probably at the turn of the 21st century.
Really?
Yeah, so I was like, that's why I got beaten up in school. I was the only Jewish kid left. Like when I started, there were 3 of us in the same class,
Right.
and by the time, I guess the 3rd grade turned around, everybody immigrated either to Israel or to America or somewhere to Europe.
So being the teaching pastor, multiplication, I don't know. You know, when I think about the typical teaching pastor, I'm not sure multiplication is necessarily on his mind. Do you know what I mean? You think about the next teaching, you just want to go up on, behind the pulpit, preach. At what point did multiplication come into kind of the narrative of your ministry?
So I always wanted to see united Christianity in Moldova. I wanted to see churches collaborating with each other. So I was always part of some kind of a relationship with other churches. And in 2020, when Exponential came as an opportunity for us to go to Germany, there was a conference planned in Berlin. And it's kind of, it's always God's move. So independently, 3 biggest partners that we have in the United States all have been exposed to Exponential, whether through Europe or through US.
Wow.
And they all said, hey, this is something you need to hear. We started to get exposed to Dave Ferguson's books, to Alan Hirsch. And so we just like, okay, what is this thing? We don't understand, but we were open to go. And when in 2020, the conference was canceled and everybody was so tired of sitting at homes, we also faced some theological issues. And the theological issues was, how do you do communion? Especially now that you have Easter coming up, but you're not allowed to get together as a church. And so, believe it or not, somehow, me with all these years of ministry and trying to build relationships with different denominations, churches, I ended up leading a group through one of the messenger apps where we would call each other as pastors and would have these theological conversations. And that led to, well, let's get together for a day because there's this Exponential deal. We've got these online videos. And I'm going to serve lunch. And so all these pastors who were, I think by the time when we came, I think a couple of them were actually even sick with COVID. We didn't know if it was that or not. But we got together and we went through the program. But that last hour where they say, well, now you sit down and you have a conversation. The group of about 20 pastors that came together, we're sitting there and it's quiet in the room. And I'm actually sitting on top of a table. And one of them says, well, he's a kind of a mover, like a respected member of the community. He goes, well, Evghenii, you got us here together. What would you have? What would you do us? Tell us your heart.
Wow.
Which was like, okay. Well, and so I actually shared my passion for the unification. And believe it or not, it's kind of sparked it kind of, tugged a chord. There were Campus Crusade, there were GCM movements, East-West Ministries. There were a couple other individual pastors. We've actually started dreaming together. We started to get together, to pray together. We did another one in 2001. So by the 2002 gathering, we actually brought in 230 Christian leaders. We did the discipleship conference from the entire Moldovan disciple-making community. And it was just to see that the Moldovan church, now, believe it or not, part of the Ukraine war. So when Russians attacked Ukraine, the Church of Jesus responded as one body. And the reason it happened, it was because of Exponential. Now, we came in 2001 in the fall, and it was a great experience. But we felt like, you know what, we don't want to just talk about multiplication once a year. Let's start doing something together. So on February 24th, 2022, I actually hosted a lunch. And I told the pastors, would you come and I'll feed you lunch and let's plan something together.
There's a pattern here with food.
Well, yeah, we love to eat Moldova. We got second best food in the world, second only to France.
Oh,
no, and that's some Moldovans will disagree with me because I'm biased. I like French food because I've been to France, but We have very flavorful food. Anyway,
Oh, I don't think I've ever had Moldovan food.
you need to come and try some.
Yeah, all right.
All right. Yeah, and I mean, it's really flavorful. It's really
that's
good.
good.
Yeah. I usually have people that come to teach in our school. We still have adjunct faculty, and they usually say, we come to Moldova because we love the gospel and we love to teach the students, but I know that's the second reason.
Yeah,
the first one is because they like Moldovan food.
So you get them together.
So we got together, but that was the morning when the Russians attacked Ukraine.
Wow.
So our ministry has actually made a plan because there was it was up in the news. Well, Russians are, they could attack, and Americans are warning Ukraine. And so we made a plan of how we're going to respond to the influx of refugees because,
so you were ahead of this.
For 2 weeks prior, we had this feeling that we need to start talking about it. Wow. So our staff talked about it, our church prepared, and there's several other people we contacted to sort of make some plans. So when we gathered, we ate lunch. It was a little awkward. We prayed, and then I said, okay, well, here's what we're doing. And so we basically said, we're sending people to the border, we're setting up houses, we're converting the church into the halfway houses, to the refugee centers. And believe it or not, there was probably a group of about 30 plus pastors who were all interested in multiplication. We just started to respond as one body. It was like nobody kept resources. Everybody shared everything. It's like that first century church where you just called me, you needed mattresses. I just gave you mattresses. I had people call me I never met. And they would just tell me, hey, I got, Ted from Young Life called me, he said you can help. And that was enough. There was this brotherhood where we would provide for each other, provide for the needs. It went on for several months. And probably sometime by that fall of 2022, that spirit, we decided, you know what, we don't want to give up on that spirit of collaboration. We want to capitalize on that, and we want to move forward as the Church of Jesus Christ. So we are seeing a huge shift. Now, I have to confess that certain denominational churches, they're still the same way. Like if you want to do something with the Baptist Union, unless they're doing it, they're not going to be a part of it officially. Now, individual churches are now pastor to pastor, great relationships. Same thing with Pentecostal churches. So what we've actually come up in Moldova, we are inter-church, cross-denominational. Mm-hmm. So we're not saying denominations endorse us, but we just cross-denominational borders. Yeah. And we have a very wide group. Like this year, when we did our Exponential, we specifically talked about evangelism, the Gospel X. And we had 130 evangelists. So cool. Because the Exponential conferences are topical, so they attract a specific, group of people interested in that. But we did roundtables, and we're seeing that the idea of multiplication became an idea that filled my heart about 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, we're seeing that my church is full. So I run 2 church services. We are maximizing our facility, so we're always anywhere from 85 to 95% full. If I want to grow my church, and it's hard to get a facility, and so I have to either get a new facility, try to fundraise more money. I can add another service, but it means adding other staff. That means changing probably the church structure. There's only that many people. I've got about 400 people in my church that I minister to. If I grow bigger, I have to change. I like my church. I don't want to change. But here's the idea. Even if I was successful and I expanded, how big can I get?
Right.
Is that going to be my legacy? And that's not my kingdom. And that's where the idea came. I want churches like mine all over the city. I want them to have my DNA, but they're not. The church planting is not going to be something I'm going to hold. I don't want a campus where I have a control. I want to plant churches. And that idea was so permeating that we started to talk to other pastors around, and we've done some church planting. We've enabled other guys, but that was the idea, is that we need to give up something of our best and let those people. So we just planted a church. This last December was the first service. And somebody asked me this question: what does multiplication, because you talk multiplication, and then a similar question you asked me, so what does multiplication mean for you? And my answer was, it was surprising to myself. I need to give up my best to enable another pastor. So this guy who just planted the church, I told him, you come to this church, you find anybody you can find, anybody you convince to go with you, you're going to have my blessing. And this church is going to help you and is going to support you. If you find the best singers, if you find the best leaders, I'm not. And now, am I going to be hurting? somewhere inside, I'll be dealing with the Lord, because sometimes you raise people, you want them to stay with you. But multiplication has become an idea that this is the biblical pattern. This is not about my kingdom. This is about God's kingdom. So it was a slow process, and it was a process of not just changing of myself, but the whole Moldovan Christianity taking a new shape. So I hopefully that answers part of your question.
That's very cool. I like the idea of us reflecting on who and what are we raising our leaders for? Are we raising them for us, or are we raising them to best so they go? We have leaders in our church. I tell them, you do know you're too good to stay, right? I always tell them, you're too good to stay. Like we need to send you out, right? There's others we don't send out because they're not good yet, and so we do the same thing with our church planters. We tell them, only take the good ones and take them with you. The other ones are not ready yet, But that mentality, I mean, is it just the Lord doing it? Is it what shifted within you, and have you seen some pushback? And what are the obstacles that you kind of perceive within your context of that?
With all honesty, it's more of a personal struggle. So like the good thing about staying in the same place, people know you and you know the people. The bad thing about staying in the same place,
people know you.
I mean, people know you, and I had come, to a point to where I realized, okay, I've been in this ministry for so many years. I've just celebrated 20 years of being the teaching pastor. I came to know the Lord in this church. Is this it for my life? I mean, God, is this what you want me to do the rest of my life? And the interesting thing was I had several of those moments in my life. And there were some very profound ways of God had spoken. The multiplication idea, it was like God had spoken.
Wow.
I'll give you another example. Right before I turned 40, I was struggling with what's next. All of us men, we have to reinvent ourselves. I mean, this is part of us growing older, becoming more, father-like, men-like. And before that, we actually did a lot of ministry in Central Asia. So when we became an independent church, not dependent on the American leadership, we depend on the partnerships. We decided in 2004 that we want to go to places where Westerners cannot. So we decided that Central Asia is really the place where Westerners are not welcome. Specifically, we targeted the Dungan people in Kyrgyzstan. They were Chinese Muslims speaking two dialects of Mandarin, Gunsu and Shangxi, but there were no Western missionaries who were welcomed in those villages. So we actually sent our seminary students to do ministry in the villages, to do some construction projects, to just break the ice, which was, in hindsight, was extremely successful. We spent there about 10 years with short-term trips, long-term missionaries. We were able to introduce American missionaries. But the issue was, once that was done, I was wondering, what's my next step?
Right.
And, sometimes you struggle. I mean, do I want to move to America one day? I mean, that idea is still there. I was on my way to Texas to preach several churches. Right the week before I come, I got a text message from a pastor who I thought didn't even remember my name, but he's the senior pastor of First Baptist Church Midlands. It's a very nice, prominent church. He says, would you preach for me? He got my newsletters. He got impressed with what God is doing. I'm so excited. I'm getting to the airport in the morning to get to Turkey. The only problem is that my flight is canceled. The only next flight I can catch is in the evening. By the time I get to Istanbul the next morning, there's only 2 flights to the United States out of Istanbul. Everything else is like it's snowed in the U.S. There is hundreds of people trying to get on those planes, and I already missed my plane, so there's no way I can get somebody's seat, and by God's miracle, I get a seat. So I'm so nervous. I'm pacing up and down the terminal. People were so focused on trying to get. You know how sometimes people will just line up last minute to get to the airplane? An hour and a half prior, people are lined up, just standing there waiting to get on that plane. And I'm pacing, I'm kind of nervous. I can't think of a sermon. And as I'm walking by, I see these two ladies in Muslim head coverings. So they're on their knees. They got a white coat with a fur collar. They got a phone on that coat with a compass. And as I'm walking by, I'm kind of glancing at them. They're looking for east. I guess they're trying to do the prayer or whatever. And it just dawns on me. They're looking for. It's almost God says they're looking for me.
Yeah.
They're not there. But if they find east, they're not going to find me. If they go all the way to Mecca, if they go to do the Hajj, they do the whole touch the Kaaba stone, whatever, they're not gonna find me. But you know where to find me.
Wow.
And then this cold shower thought comes into my mind. Okay, money, location, no question. Choose. Do you want to spend the rest of your life living in a comfortable life? I'll take care of it. Financial. You're gonna like the sunsets. You're gonna enjoy the sea. Whatever. Would you rather do that, or would you rather be in my service and keep telling these people where to find me?
Wow.
And it was, and it's like a religious experience, and it was probably seconds. It was, or maybe like a half a minute, but I just knew for like I want to do what I do right now. There's no question that I need to be doing what I'm doing. And as I turn around, now I'm going to tell you the story that I went and I found them and I shared Jesus with them. I mean, first of all, I'm not that bold to do that in Istanbul, Turkey. Second of all, I did want to go and see them, and I was actually hoping maybe I can take a snapshot for myself, like the picture. I'm kind of like mindful that way. And literally walking by a minute later, they're gone. So did I imagine them? Were they God's, was that a vision? Was that real women that went away? In my mind, I know God had spoken. And multiplication came almost just like that, where I knew that as the words coming out of my mouth in front of a couple other pastors who said, well, what are you excited about? And as I'm talking about, I want to see multiplying the gospel. I want to see multiplying disciples. I want to see multiplying leaders, because we have the seminary, and I want to see multiplying churches. As I'm saying that, they're saying, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, here's in a simple way. I don't want my church to grow. And I almost got scared because I'm sitting in front of this two pastors, the senior pastor and the executive pastor, of a large multi-site church in the United States. They are one of our bigger supporters. And they're like, I think they've been long enough around the block to like explain. And that's what I told them. I don't want my church to grow. I want my church to multiply. I want to see God's kingdom multiply across this city, across the country of Moldova, and now with over 10 million Russian speakers across Europe, all the way to Portugal, UK, I understand we got our mission field cut out for us. Because I've traveled, I personally have not, but I sent one of my church planters to take the route with refugees all the way to Karlsruhe, Germany. And I have to confess, brother, I have been extremely disappointed. We were not able to identify a single church in Karlsruhe, Germany, who was actively working with the refugees. And our ministry, our church, personally put a bottle of water and a bag of food in the hands of at least 10,000 that I can account for. And that broke my heart because, we need to plant a church in Karlsruhe, Germany. Now, it's not as easy as, we're in Eastern Europe. It's a little easier to do that. We realize that. But that opened up our understanding. Multiplication is the only way. Empowering new leaders, raising leaders to go. That's the only way the gospel is going to fill in the European continent again and beyond.
Because it started with the mission at the core, right?
Yes.
It is about, is this about ministry success? How do I measure that? Or is it about fulfilling, my personal ministry dream? Or is it about fulfilling the great comfort? Or is this about fulfilling the Great Commission? And if the mission is at the core, then you start thinking about, well, if that's what we're trying to do, how does then church and discipleship and leadership and all those things have to look in order to fulfill that? And then multiplication is the only way. It's like, how else are we going to get from Jerusalem to the end of the earth? Well, not by just extending, adding more wings to our buildings that just encompass the whole world, right? It's about sending people out. What have been some of the challenges? Or maybe let me repose that question in the sense of, what have been some of the ways you thought it would go, but then you realized, it's different than you would have first anticipated?
Well, first of all, I tried to develop relationships with some of the key churches in the city. And the people who were at the beginning with us 5 years ago in that room, and even the gentleman who sort of sparked the conversation, I was like, yes, they are on my side. Yes. And I even offered, like, hey, we got this guy who's moving from your church. Let's put our effort together. We're going to help you plant that church, and let's do our collaboration. Well, that actually ended up in a disaster. And I found out that sometimes changing the old mentality is very hard. So the people I felt who were going to go with me, they didn't.
The price was too high.
Probably so. And I would say something to go even back to what you just mentioned. If this is about me, if this is about personal legacy, then this is not going to work.
Yeah.
You know, with all honesty, you know, maybe I'm just used to it because when I say Evghenii, many people like, what's your name again? Or so I kind of have to come up with Eugene or Eugen or
Eugene.
yeah, I just kind of like come up.
Evgenie's much cooler.
But yeah, but the thing is that my name doesn't matter. If
Yeah.
I go in the history of the church as there was a guy or there was a desire on the part of some people, I don't mind.
Right.
Because it's really not about me. Like
the unknown disciples that planted the church in Antioch, right? Like, we don't know who they were.
Absolutely. And so when I started to see like-minded people, and so the GCM movements, the Campus Crusade guys, they have been extremely a huge blessing. They've invited me to join some of their vision. They joined in on what we're doing. They became one of the best advocates of multiplication. And of course, they are a large organization in Moldova. But now we're one movement. East-West Ministries, with like there's Konstantin Pocherenko and a couple other guys. They are passionate about church planting. Suddenly, when we just started to see that we are on the same page and we dream the same thing, we just started to see that people we were hoping are gonna go with us, they're not. But we never even saw each other, and now that we see each other, we are seeing a new move of God among us, where there's true brotherhood being built. It's a mutual relationship, and so I would say the obstacles that we thought that there would be obstacles, they were not there. But the denominational structures, they still continue to be a little bit of a difficulty. But now for us, we understand we're not the only ones who are going to change the gospel. The country. You know, the Lord may raise up within denominations people, and would be more than happy to collaborate if they want to. But it's just we have to change our mentality. We have to go with people who are like-minded, and we should not waste time or try to count on the people whose hearts are not there yet. And I'm just kind of trying to be in a nice way saying not there yet, if you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. That's very good. Hey, Evgeny, that's such an encouraging story. What an incredible story of collaboration and how the Lord can bring in a heart for multiplication and the desire to, in the words of Zinzendorf, preach the gospel, die and be forgotten. Like, to live that selfless sacrifice of it's not about me and seeing my ministry advance, it's about seeing the kingdom advance, whatever that takes. And even if that means sending my best away, whatever helps. That's really encouraging. Thanks for taking the time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And now that you mentioned Moravian brothers, we're Moldovans, and I maybe like one day will be known as Moldovan brothers.
Love it. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you.